Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I'm your host, Tim Matthews, with my co-host, Jared, the Powerful Man Rush.
I knew you were going to do that. The invite for today said Tim, just Tim, plain Tim Matthews. And I was like, here we go. Here we go.
Well, what the listeners don't know, the viewers, if you're on YouTube, is Jared, Mr. Rush. So just a little bit of backstory. He's been in the movement a few years now, in the inner circle, bringing Jared more into the fold. He's got a lot to offer the men. But anyway, he rocks up. He's done some episodes before, as you guys will potentially know, depending on how long you've been listening. Trying to just pick out the actual episode numbers. I don't know if you've got them, Jared.
I don't.
I'm just looking here on the list. Okay, no worries. But anyway, Jared rocks up today and he goes, right, so I have 4 topics for us. I'm like, whoa, nice. What are they? And he starts rattling them off. And I'm like, right, take it away. We're hitting record. And he's like, no,
I'm not ready.
And here we are. So, Mr. Rush.
On that note, I think actually the topic I picked out is, oh God, sorry, my bad. I should have muted that. I'm a podcast noob. Okay. Trusting your gut and taking a leap, because to me, that's kind of what we're doing here is, if you're letting me lead, trusting your gut and taking a leap. So I think we live in a time where, people get in their head too much and they're not willing to take the big leaps into things that maybe their heart feels right. But ultimately they, when they do take that leap, they're blown away by the outcome.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. So why do you think people struggle to take the leap?
One, they're too comfortable and maybe complacent in their story and where they are in life. They think they have a good life. They think they don't want to spill the apple cart, if you will, or kick the ant pile of their life and cause a little bit of chaos. Sometimes it takes a little bit of chaos and change to take a leap. And I think that sometimes people are like, oh, my life's good. And, I don't want to, doing this or quitting my job or changing things up at home or whatever. It may be, it may be better in the long run, but the short term, it's going to cause chaos in their lives.
Okay. So what you're saying is because of the chaos that means you, if they surrender essentially and follow it?
Yeah. Surrender, let go of the fear, let go of any type of story they have of, being in their head too much and being able to just get into their heart, take a leap and go. I think that surrendering is a huge part of that. I think that knowing to surrender is actually the hardest part. Trusting that.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious. So you've come up with these topics. You've chosen this one. I'm guessing that you've come up with these topics because of something that's either happening in your life or has just happened in your life. Or am I completely way off the mark?
No, for sure. Everything to me is always what's relevant going on in my life. This week, I actually spent a couple of days with one of the brothers from the Brotherhood. What people don't know is we all live, people know, but we all live all over different parts of the country, different parts of the world. But sometimes opportunity presents itself to connect outside of, the digital world, if you will, in the real life. And one of the brothers reached out to me about 2 months ago, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to move to Texas. I'm from Texas. I've lived in Texas, but I now live up in Montana, and it's too cold. There's not enough to do. I'm looking to make a shift, and I haven't been in Texas in 20 years. Tell me about Texas." So I shot him a message. Hey, here are all the pros and cons of every city. And he's like, okay, cool. And I just let him marinate, if you will. And then he reached back out to me and he's like, I'm thinking this, and this. And I was like, you know what you should do? I was like, you should get in a plane, rent a car, and just go and just experience it and just see what feels right for you. I didn't want to steer him in any particular direction. I made it very clear to him, hey, this has got to be your choice. But you're the one that needs to take a leap. And he gets to take a leap. He doesn't need to do anything. But he's got a successful business up there. He's got a wife. He's got a life up there in Montana. And to take that leap for him was, I don't know, it's scary. He had to get out of his head and let go of the fear of the unknown. But he arrived, and I took him to lunch, had some good old Texas barbecue, and at the barbecue place, the owner of the barbecue place is talking to us about these warehouses, and we're like, "Oh, that sounds perfect." We drive there, look at the warehouses, and it kind of it's under construction. It's not ready. I'm like, okay, this isn't the one, but boom, it inspired an idea in me. I'm like, I know exactly where he is. If this is what you want,
was he looking for a house, an office?
He's looking to move everything. He's looking to move his office, his business, his life, his wife, his dogs, his everything. He is going to put everything into a U-Haul and come on down. And he's leaving 90% of the old behind, actually, and just starting fresh in life, taking that huge leap because he knows if he wants big change in his life, he's got to take a big leap. Mm-hmm. And it's inspiring for me, actually, because I was like, wow, like, one, I take for granted where I live and what all I have and all these things around me daily, but also to see him just go out on faith and go out on a dream and be like, you know what, I'm going to do this and take decisive action and make it happen. It was inspiring to me, honestly. We found him the perfect spot. We walked in. He has some certain electrical requirements that his business needs, and he was super kind of anxiety ridden about that part of the equation. We walk into this space, and it has exactly these unique electrical needs within that space. And I was like, bro, you need to sign a lease. I was like, you do whatever you want, but I was like, this is perfect. He just took a leap of faith, and he's leaned into what his gut is telling him, what his heart is telling him. And I think a lot of men, it doesn't have to be as drastic as moving your entire family to a different state or whatever. But I think a lot of men hold back on themselves and their dreams and their potential future because they're stuck and they're complacent and they're not willing to go out on faith and change their life.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, this is how the guys end up in no man's land and the 5 agonies, right? For you guys that don't know, the 5 agonies, they start with greed, but really it's more of an emptiness, right? No matter what you have or what you achieve, it never feels like enough. And at the same time, you then wind up feeling frustrated because you have everything you thought you needed to have. And when you had these things, the home, the holiday, the car, the money, the business, the wife, the family, whatever, that's when you would, quote unquote, be the man or get the respect or the admiration or whatever, right? Then when that doesn't happen, at least the second agony of anger, because the men are used to being able to solve problems. So it's like, hang on a minute, I've worked hard. I've done everything I quote unquote should do. Why am I still feeling this way? Why does my wife still talk to me in that way? Why does she disrespect me or ignore me or whatever? Right? And it leads to anger, and they almost become like a volcano ready to erupt any moment. And eventually they do erupt, right? Whether it's a short word to the kid or to the kids, a sharp word to the wife, the staff, whatever. And that leads to the third agony of shame. They feel ashamed because they promised themselves they wouldn't do it again. They promised themselves that this time it'd be different, which then leads to the fourth agony of loneliness because, okay, well, maybe it's just easier if I'm not around. So they'll stay at the office later, or they'll come home when the kids have gone to bed, or they'll spend more time out of the house, or whatever it is. They'll just basically isolate themselves, create loneliness to spare the people they love, essentially, their anger and their wrath, if you will. And sometimes they're kind of blown out of proportion. It's not as bad as they think. But anyway, at least the fifth agony of uncertainty. They realize that they cannot live like this forever, right? If they continue being like this in the marriage, then how long will the wife stay around? If I continue being like this with my kids, what effect is that going to have on them? How long is the business going to survive without a leader, having a leaderless organization, which Again, the fifth agony is uncertainty. So the reason why I share that is because oftentimes the men that come to us have found themselves going through the five agonies, wondering and kind of lost in no man's land. And a lot of that is because they've done what they thought they should do to either fit in or please others or be a nice guy, be it they've taken over the family business or they've got into a business they thought they should get into or whatever. But the reality is they've often not built a business that stems from what they truly want to do, the way in which they really want to create money and impact in a meaningful way. And then they realize, they wonder, well, how come I'm not feeling very good about this, right? So I think you raise a really powerful point of where in your life are you coming from your head versus your heart? Your head's typically going to be fear. It's going to be logic. It's going to be sacrifice. It's going to be scarcity for the most part. Because again, you're going to do what you think you should do to fit in, to get love, to be good enough, all that fun stuff. Whereas your heart typically is going to be the place that's exciting and scary. You have dreams, you have inspiration, and you want to follow it. And it just, you got to overcome that initial bit of inertia because there is a great deal of unknown, like filling up a U-Haul and moving, right? I'll speak for myself. The biggest shifts in my life came when I started to trust myself and follow what felt right. Because for most of my life, that isn't how I lived. And that's what wound me up in a position where I was engaged to a woman that I didn't want to be with. Great person, let's say, but definitely the wrong relationship was for me, very toxic. Yet I was a yes man. I was a people pleaser. I operated from my head. So what did I do? I proposed to her. We booked the wedding. We bought a 4-bedroom detached house so we could have, kids in it. And I should never have been in that relationship. And I was terrified of leaving. I was terrified of what would people think of me. I was getting robbed of tens of thousands in a business deal I should never have gone into. I went into it out of desperation and neediness. I had a business that I was more like a firefighter than a leader, constantly putting out fires because I tolerated issues from staff. I attracted problem clients. I undercharged for the services we delivered. Right? There were many, many symptoms that almost died from taking too many drugs several years previous. I used to put myself worth on being able to attract and pull women because, that felt good, right? But the point I'm making is all these different situations, I knew that it wasn't the right thing to do. Like it felt wrong, but following my gut, trusting my heart, if you will, my intuition, terrified me. Terrified me. It almost paralyzed me until the point where I think my mum and dad were paying for the wedding. They were paying for the wedding. And they were about to put, I think, maybe 30 grand down on it, something like that they would never have gotten back. And I knew it was the wrong thing to do going through with that wedding. And honestly, if we would have been paying for that wedding, I don't know, maybe I would have just gone through with it. I don't know. But I couldn't do that to my parents. And that was the real breaking point. And transparently, at that time as well, we'd moved into a new office. I was working alongside a woman who actually started to take an interest in me. And this was a woman who was interested in personal growth and personal development. She was confident. She was independent. She was just everything I'd dreamed of, honestly, woman. But I didn't think was possible for me. I didn't know anyone in personal development back then. I used to pick my ex up when she finished work and I'd have a Tony Robbins audiobook on and she'd get in and she'd go, turn this stuff off. Disgusting. Literally, that was how she would act. And if I picked her up in her car, she'd say, it's my car. Okay. Pick her up in my car, still same reaction. So anyway, when this other woman started to kind of show me what was possible, if you will, that coupled with my parents about to pay the wedding, I reached a breaking point. And I think there are several times in our lives when I think we reach these breaking points, that forks in the road, where we get to make decisions that are going to shift the trajectory of our lives. And oftentimes, to your point, those decisions are not logical decisions. They're typically inspired decisions that feel exciting and scary. And if we choose to ignore that decision and we choose to ignore what feels right, and guess what? We continue to get more of the same. And that hit of inspiration, more than likely, isn't going to come back around again.
Right.
Not anytime soon, anyway. Whereas if we pay attention to it and we choose, I say choose, we kind of let go. And the beauty of this is the more that we do it and the more it produces results that are far beyond anything we could ever imagine. It's kind of like a muscle. It's kind of like going to the gym. The more you bench, at first you've got DOMs. At first you walk in the gym, you might feel a bit skinny. You might feel a bit insecure. You might go on the bench, you lift the bar down, it's kind of wobbling all over the place. And, the next day you're sore and you're like, it gets to 2 days later, you're doing the gym again. You're like, oh my God, I do not want to go back. I do not have it in me to go to the gym again. But you do, you show up and you go. And then, 6 months later, you're just hitting the gym. You're hitting records every week, every month, boom, because you've worked the muscle.
Right.
Same is kind of true with this. When you learn to, first of all, listen to how that inspiration's communicating with you. And then you actually choose to let go and follow it like this guy is.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that about your parents, because I think a lot of people will self-sacrifice and sabotage until they'll do it to themselves all day long. They'll cost themselves money. They'll cost themselves time. They'll cost themselves opportunities. But when it starts to affect the ones they love the most, either financially, emotionally, whatever, that's when they're like, okay, you know what? Enough's enough. For me, I realized that, joining the Powerful Man, I would kick the can and delay my self-growth, probably honestly to this day. But when I started to see it affect my kids, when my wife basically drew a line in the sand and said, look, like, this is it, or this is time to move on. It was kind of that punch in the gut that some men need to take that leap. I hope and pray that the world produces men in future generations that don't necessarily need that push to take that leap. Having a little bit of a push, okay, cool. But there's nothing more gratifying than being the one that leaps off the cliff and just jumps right out of that, airplane and says, you know what, I'm doing this because it is right for me in this moment, and I'm making it happen. I have a few friends that I'm sorry for that thing keep going off. I don't know if you can hear it. I need to get better at podcasting. I have a few friends that take decisive action like that, and a few friends, honestly, in Powerful Man that do that as well. And they're all up-leveling. They are all up-leveling in every single thing they do. And it's inspiring. And then I've got a few friends that just sit there and they tell themselves stories, and they have the, it must be nice. It must be nice for him, total crap attitude about, I could never do that or whatever. And to me, I have more of the attitude, you know what? Good for him. Not must be nice, but good for him. And be inspired by that. And you know what? Poke holes in your game and see where you're able to up-level yourself. Take that leap. And this guy, Greg, he's an amazing guy. He's actually new to the program. And I told him yesterday, we went and had some amazing Tex-Mex Mexican food down here. He loved it. I told him at that lunch, I was like, you don't realize, you're new to this. I was like, but you're actually ahead of where a lot of guys are, because you're able to lean into yourself and you're able to, he shows up religiously. So showing up, that's a big part of anything in life, but also, he's out of his head and he's into his heart. And I think when guys make that shift and stop telling themselves stories, stop letting their ego get in the way, stop all the bull BS, they're able to do things they never thought possible.
I love that. And look, the reality was for me back then when I was in my head, denying my truth, denying what I felt called to do. The reason for that was I didn't feel good enough. So what I did is I played it safe and I played not to lose versus playing to win. So, like I said, I went into things out of neediness and desperation because underneath all of my actions, well, I wanted to people please, right? I wanted to play it safe. I wanted to do all the other things that go along with that because I wanted to be liked. I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to rock the boat or rock the apple cart, which typically, if I was going to follow what I felt called to do, it would have done. And again, the reason for that is because I didn't feel good enough. Quite honestly, I felt I had feelings of inadequacy underneath everything that was going on. I didn't realize it back then. So the reason why I share that is because, guys, if you're listening to this or watching it and this is resonating, the first thing that I would suggest that you do is look at where are you holding back in the 5 territories: self, health, wealth, relationships, and business. Where are you holding back? Where are you denying what you really feel called to do? Get real with yourself. Get specific, right? Maybe it's having a conversation with a business partner. Maybe it's launching a different business. Maybe it's setting some boundaries with your wife. Maybe whatever it is, right? Get a list, write down, right? The second thing you get to do is explore the possibilities of why you are holding back. Like I said, for me, the reality was when I actually stopped and paused and looked at my life and looked at the pattern that I had in my life, and I asked myself some tough questions, and I sat with the question. I didn't force the answer to come up. I sat with it. I thought about it for a few days. I didn't just sit down for a few days, but you get the point. You ask yourself a question, your subconscious mind works on it. Go about your day and just journal, right? Revisit the question, revisit the topic until you feel it's complete. And for me, the reason why, like I said, was because I was terrified of being rejected. I was terrified of what that meant for me. I didn't feel good enough. And then the third thing you get to do is start small. Where do you get to flex that muscle? Where do you get to follow what feels right? Because you get to honor that and make some decisions, make some choices bit by bit, bit by bit. And the more you do it, the more you see the evidence, the more it fuels your confidence, the stronger the muscle gets, the more often it communicates with you, the easier it is to use, and so on, and so on, and so on. Jared, any other practical steps you want to give the guys on this?
Oh, you summed it up very well. As Doug Holt always says, at the moment of insight, take decisive action. But, I say, as Jared says, you know what? Jump and just leap. And whether it's joining this program or some other self-development or changing your life in an epic way, quit telling yourself a story. Quit telling yourself you can't, and be able to lean into your heart, get out of your head, and truly just jump.
Yeah, I love it, because that's where the magic lies. And I actually put a training in the Facebook group, just on a side note, a couple of weeks ago now, talking about one of the ways to become instantly attractive to your wife. And it was a offer for a free training. And actually what it was the idea of living on your edge. Right. And it's the training that I took you guys through in the monthly pack call, right? And the reason why I bring that up is because this is an example of living on your edge. When you jump, when you follow what feels right, you let go of needing to know step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You become alive. You become magnetic. You feel free and powerful. And it's one of the things that my bet here, anyways, it's one of the things that probably you had in the beginning of your relationship. That oftentimes, as men then allow themselves to get busy and put their needs last and self-sacrifice and people please, they lose touch with this side of themselves. And then they become kind of lifeless, quite honestly. And that's not attractive to anyone. So, you said it brilliantly, Jared. Jump. So, guys, As Jared said, jump. As Mr. Dougie Fresh would say, at the moment of insight, take massive action. And until next time, have a fantastic day, and thank you for joining us on The Powerful Man Show.